school's out, blame corona, but I still got some science I could show ya. No class, no school, that's cool, throw the class on the YouTube. Even if they shut the school down, I'll get that knowledge anyway somehow. Real scholars won't stop for corona. Tune in for that science takeover.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Mrs. Finney's science class. Shout out to the HB Warriors, to all of our subscribers, and to all of our visitors from my house to your house. Let's learn science. Today, we are still in lesson 9. And this time, we're looking at section 5, Mendel and inheritance. Who is Mendel? We shall find out today. Our learning objective says, I can explain how dominant alleles and recessive alleles influence trait inheritance. Let's look at our reading. So here we start off with, what do you have in common with a pea plant? Probably more than you might guess. Gregor Mendel, a monk who lived in what is now the Czech Republic during the 1800s, was the first person to study inheritance using math. Science and math, I told you, they're like first cousins. They're so close. His use of probability to explain why traits are inherited in a certain pattern led to the development of the modern theory of genetic inheritance. This is because what he found in pea plants turned out to be true for genes and other organisms, including humans. Mendel studied the inheritance of traits such as flower color, seed color, and plant height in pea plants. He studied one trait at a time over many generations of pea plants and collected detailed data. Mendel used true breeding tall and short plants in his research. True breeding means that the tall plants had always produced only tall offspring when they were bred together, and the short plants had always produced only short offspring when they were bred together. When Mendel bred a true breeding tall plant to a true breeding short plant, he found something strange. He found that all the offspring were tall, not medium, nor were some of them tall and others short. Puzzling, right? The trait for short height seemed to have disappeared in this first generation. Vanished, voila, out of here. Poof, be gone. Next, Mendel bred 2 of these tall offspring to each other. He expected that all the offspring in the second generation would be tall like their parents, but he found that about 75% were tall and 25% were short. The short trait had reappeared in the second generation. Mendel's findings are illustrated in figure 5a. Let's figure out what he found out about this first and second generation. Check this out. All right, so here we have in this image, I think I may pull this up a little differently. Here we go, let's see. Okay, so here were the parents initially. One tall, one short. Okay, let's go to that first generation. Nobody was medium. You figure you blend tall with short. All right, we're going to get medium. No, that didn't happen. First generation, 100% tall plants. No sight of short at all. But check this out. The second generation, okay, 75% tall plants, 25% short plants. 75% tall, 25% short. Where in the world did this short plant come from? How did he get 25% short plants? I'm going to figure that out. Okay, so here it says, Mendel did not know about genes, but he concluded that there must have been some factors that are passed on from parent to offspring. He thought that there was one factor that controlled tallness and another factor that controlled shortness, but somehow the factor that controlled tallness could hide or overcome the factor that controlled shortness. We now know that Mendel's factors were alleles found on chromosomes. Each pea plant had inherited 2 alleles, one from each parent. The tall parent plant had 2 alleles for tallness, and the short parent plant had 2 alleles for shortness. The plants of the first generation all inherited 1 allele for tallness from the tall parent and 1 allele for shortness from the short parent. But why were the short alleles hidden? Mendel had discovered that some alleles are dominant and others are recessive. You remember we talked about that. A dominant allele is one that is expressed even if only 1 copy is present. The allele for tallness was dominant. A recessive allele is one that is expressed only when 2 copies are present. The allele for shortness was recessive. Recessive can be carried from one generation to the next even if they aren't expressed. They can seem to reappear by being expressed in a later generation. So even though the first generation all had an allele for shortness, the plants were not short because the dominant tall allele overshadowed that trait. So the dominant allele dominate. Why does the recessive shortness trait come back in the second generation? In the second generation, some plants inherited only the alleles for shortness randomly from each parent. Without having any of the dominant tallness alleles, the plant will be short. Dominant and recessive alleles are also important for human traits like eye color. Using the eye color gene OCA2 as an example, the capital B allele of OCA2 is dominant, and a person who inherits 2 capital B alleles will make a lot of melanin and have brown eyes. The lowercase b allele is recessive, and a person who inherits 2 lowercase b alleles will have blue eyes. A person with 1 capital B allele and 1 lowercase allele, B allele of the OCA2 gene will make melanin and have darker eyes. The dominant allele masks the recessive allele. So both someone with 2 capital B alleles or 1 capital B allele and 1 lowercase b allele will have brown eyes. Only a person who inherits a lowercase b allele from each parent will have blue eyes. So figure 5b illustrates one version of OCA2 allele inheritance for this family. This example is actually a simplified version of reality because many genes contribute to eye color and not all work the same way. The actual inheritance of eye color is much more complex. Keep that in mind. Scientists continue to find new genes that are involved in determining eye color. Let's take a look at this image. Okay, so we see here we have the mother. Okay, she has a dominant allele and a recessive allele, right? And then we have the father. He has 2 recessive alleles. Okay, and so for the child received the mother's first allele, which was dominant, and the father's second allele, which was recessive. So then the child has a dominant and a recessive. So what color eyes would the child have? Okay, the child would have brown eyes just like the mother. Okay. Scrolling down here, let's check for understanding. In the 1800s, Gregor Mendel noticed that breeding a true breeding tall plant to a true breeding short plant resulted in all tall offspring. Why did this occur? You should know, and I know you do. Let's take a look at our choices. A says the short plant carried a genetic mutation that was lost in reproduction. Let's go to B. True breeding plants only carry dominant alleles. Let's go to C. The dominant tall allele overshadowed the recessive short allele. Well, let's look at D. The recessive short allele overshadowed the dominant tall allele. Those words don't even really seem to make sense together, do they? I know, I was thinking the same thing. All right, so we want to see which one would be our best answer. Why, when Mendel noticed that breeding a true breeding tall plant to a true breeding short plant, did we get all tall offspring? What is the reason? Let's check and see if C's good. C is correct. A dominant allele is one that is expressed even if only one copy is present. In this case, the allele for tallness was dominant. All right, let's take a look at the questions we have. Make sure you go to Lesson 9, Section 5 in your TCI notebook. Question 1, here we go. What is a true breeding plant? What kind of offspring would true breeding tall plants have? What is a true breeding plant? What is a true breeding plant? That was a tongue twister. What is a true breeding plant? Answer that in your own words. Here we go. All right, it is a plant that when it reproduces with another plant with the same traits, has offspring that also have exactly those same traits that are present, both parents. True breeding tall plants would have tall offspring. Okay, let me enlarge this so you can jot this down. Looking forward to seeing your work. All right, let's move to number 2. Number 2 says Mendel bred true breeding tall plants with true breeding short plants. What trait did all the first generation offspring have? And why was Mendel surprised by the second generation? What trait did all in the first generation have? I know you know. Say that again. The first generation was all tall. Mendel was surprised because there were some, what? Short plants in the second generation. Make sure you jot that down for number 2. Let me enlarge this so you can see it. Shrink this down just a snag. All right, here we go. Next question. What does it mean for an allele to be dominant or recessive? This one. I know you can explain this in your own words. Come on. Yes. Yes. A dominant allele is one that makes a protein that determines how the trait will develop, even if only one copy is present. A recessive allele is one that will determine how the trait will develop only if 2 copies are present. Keep that in mind. Only if 2 copies are present. Okay? Jot that down. I feel like this is one of those lessons that's like, Mrs. Finney, I get it. Sinking. Not that deep. But I get it. Yes. It could be perceived as deep. But then when you think about it, like, this isn't that deep. I can do this. I have it. Next one, number 4. Why did the recessive trait for shortness come back in the second generation of Mendel's cross of tall and short plants? Why did the recessive trait come back? Exactly. The first generation all had one dominant allele and one recessive allele. When they were bred together, some offspring inherited 2 recessive alleles, and they grew as short plants, shrinking down. All right, number 5. Which of the alleles for the OCA2 gene is dominant and which is recessive? Think back. Dominant was capital B, recessive was lowercase b. All right, and 6. What trait will develop if a person has the following combinations of alleles for the OCA2 gene? What trait would they get? I know you know this. 2 dominant alleles will give you brown. 1 dominant allele, 1 recessive allele will also give you brown. 2 recessive alleles will give you blue. All right. Make sure you have those answers written down. And we are wrapping up with section 5. All right. So, learning objective was I can explain how dominant alleles and recessive alleles influence trait inheritance. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. What do you have in common with the pea plant? Sounds so strange, but I actually have a connection to pea plants. Like a pea plant, some of our alleles are dominant and others are recessive. Good job. Nice work. Nice work. Let's wrap up today's lesson with our outro. It's been fun. It's been real. We break it down and pick up science skills. Give yourself 2 claps just for tuning in. Come back, meet tomorrow. We can learn again. Oh, it's been fun. It's been real. We break it down and pick up science skills. Give yourself 2 claps just for tuning in. Come back, meet tomorrow. We can learn again. Have an awesome rest of your day. I will see you here tomorrow. Peace.